Hey guys, welcome back to a new video. I'm Stephanie Fisher. I'm a licensed counselor here in the state of Michigan, and I am owner and operator of In Progress Counseling. Over a next little series here, we're going to use a favorite analogy of mine, which is nutrition and what the body does to digest and metabolize and process nutrition. And one of the reasons this particular metaphor for me related to mental health is so helpful is because a lot of owning our story, stepping into our story, accepting our story, which we've talked about is historically so important. And then even the decision making about, do I want to continue on in these particular realities or do I want to make some pivots and changes? A lot of that is very process driven, and nutrition can be a really helpful process for understanding. But one of the pieces that shows up often at the front end of trying to metabolize story is something comes to our level of awareness. Now, I happen to work in the education arena for psychology, for abnormal development, for psychopathology. And so I really get to be at the forefront sometimes of inviting students into their story. We see this with medical students where as they're learning all of the diagnosis language, they're walking away assuming that they have, just copious amounts of diagnoses. That also happens with mental health, where as we go through the diagnostic manual, and we look at all of the different ways that pathology is languaged, and we put everything into, continuums, and we start to talk about, hey, what is abnormal psychology? Things start to click, or at least observations start where someone says, wait a second, I think this diagnosis is something I've experienced, or I think this diagnosis is something in my family system, or I think this diagnosis, because I've been up close to it, has caused me a lot of pain. And in real time, students in that particular type of class are getting fairly activated again and again and again because things are coming into their level of awareness. We have that in therapy too, where clients are coming in, and as we language their story, we might not diagnose other people, but we might say, hey, have you ever heard of this particular cluster of symptoms? It sounds like somewhere in your story you might have been affected by that. And honestly, the implications of that when someone is making a first pass at understanding their story, there can be a lot of overwhelm, a lot of frustration, and I'm going to say at the front end, a ton of rejection, which, friends, that's so human. That's so human to say, like, no, I don't, this isn't me, this isn't my story, this isn't my family, this isn't my origin. The first time when I was working with my therapist and he helped put together my trauma timeline. So I think he pulled like 4 things from my history in a particular life domain, and he put it on the board. And I know I've shared this story before. I stood up, turned my back to the board, and kind of sat in a completely different posture for the remainder of the session because I was not looking at that board. I was not accepting that story. I was not appreciating the word trauma being used. I was not co-signing on that being my narrative. And over time, from a process-driven perspective, I've made peace with it. And that's part of what we're going to language over the next couple of videos here, that idea of processing our stories. And when we process them and let them be what they are, make our peace with it, look at ways that we've accepted what's true and might have implications or limitations because of it, but also ways that resilience has shown up, and we say, hey, look, I'm not reduced to my story. I'm not reduced to a diagnosis, or I'm not reduced to this origin story. These are things that have happened, but they're not identity statements. The more we do that, and again, I'm going to use that, nutrition language, the more we just get to be who we are without some type of narrative running the story. We are very complex people. I am not a diagnosis. I am not reduced to who I was, 15, 20 years ago. We are metamorphosizing. I might have made that word up. We are changing, we are pivoting. And a lot of that comes from accepting, digesting, and moving through realities that we've experienced. That's what this next little segment is going to be dedicated to. What does it look like to process the realities of where we've been, what we've experienced? Take the things that have been helpful, healthful, resilient, restorative, and metabolize the things that have happened that maybe haven't been for our good, and yet they've happened. we can work together to move through that understanding and let it be without letting it be the whole story.